Whenever I smell asphalt, I think of old video games. That's the last thing I was into before adult life rolled in, crashing and roaring like an 18-wheel semi-truck. The first thing I remember when I came back to my senses was the thick smell of asphalt melting in the southern sun. I have always considered interactive entertainment a safe refuge, but with time, escapism has turned into an inspiration. Just like that. Free. No strings attached. I should have known then that things are never that simple. Yeah, when I think of old video games, I think of two things: asphalt and trouble. LucasArts. In the early to mid 1990s, no other company of the video games industry could even think of competing with LucasArts in terms of hitting the market with well-measured and heavy-hitting releases. While LucasArts' epic competition, Sierra Online, was very keen on exploring numerous avenues of electronic entertainment, noting over 20 game premieres in 1993 alone, the company of George Lucas was following the route of somewhat more sporadic, albeit significantly distinct publications. It's as simple as it is difficult to believe, really. Midway through the 1990s, a great part of LucasArts' most beloved, most memorable titles were already out, steadily growing into becoming timeless classics. The original Maniac Mansion, both 2D Secret of the Monkey Island games, the masterpiece in the form of Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis, and the super quirky, weird Day of the Tentacle and Sam and Max Hit the Road experiences. All this ever-amazing stuff was already out in 1993, and by 1995, the aficionados of the unique style and atmosphere of LucasArts games were already growing hungry for a new fix of awesomeness. Time boosts expectations, while the nostalgia for the irretrievably gone past does its share at multiplying the suspense of anticipation to rather unreasonable levels. Whatever LucasArts had in store, after 2 years of keeping their fans on the ice, there were some absurdly big shoes to be filled. What follows is the story of a game that has met with a somewhat lukewarm reaction at first, but that has grown to the status of a true cult classic. I'm Magic. Welcome to Joints and Games. Easy Rider. Set in a bleak, dystopian future that feels like a somber commentary on the short-sighted, consumption-driven society even more today than when the game was originally released, Full Throttle follows the adventures of Ben, a tough as nails yet totally lovable big guy with a heart of gold. Ben's the leader of a biker gang named the Polecats. Now we don't get to learn much more about Ben than that. Attentive listeners will probably notice Ben suggesting he is wanted in a number of counties, as well as his notion of his bike being his only home, but this is as personal as it gets. Now it is worth knowing that bikers in this world are not your average Hells Angels. Full Throttle approaches the subject in a romantic manner, and the dudes and dudettes burning the tires of their awesomely roaring machines are more like idealized highway pirates than anything else. But hey, having in mind that the game's story was written by Tim Schafer and Dave Grossman, who had earlier both worked together on the dialogues for the first two pirate-centric Monkey Island games, this revelation shouldn't be exactly surprising. Anyway, this is a universe that draws as much inspiration from Philip K. Dick's ramblings about the fall of the morality of mankind as it does from the aesthetic harshness of the Mad Max series. It's a brutal, mechanized world ruled by giant corporations where the abandoned wastelands and endless roads are the last bastions of what's left of true freedom. Is it tough out there? You bet your ass it is tough. Ben's gang is tough as well, however, especially when compared to the other forces operating in the area that seems to be inspired by the painted desert of the Arizona state. Their main strength seems to be, well, being the realest deal around. They don't only look old school, they are old school. But they're not as brutal as the Rottweilers, they're not as fast as the Vultures, and definitely not as creepy as the Cavefish. God damn it, the Cavefish. Creepy creeps. Even though Full Throttle is all about idealized bikers and their amazingly revamped custom choppers, this is not a world where people ride Harleys. It is a world where people ride Corleys, majestic machines, spiked with tailpipes, exhaust tubes and various pieces of badass futuristic technology like the pre-regulation, destroyer class, solid fuel recoil booster. These classic machines are produced by the last domestic motorcycle manufacturer in the country, Corley Motors. Or at least they are for now, as in the world of Full Throttle the general landscape of motorized vehicles is being progressively influenced by the rapidly growing hovercraft industry. The CEO of the company, an eccentric old-timer and a pioneer of the golden days of single tracks, going by the name of Malcolm Corley, knows better than anyone else that his days on our planet are numbered. However, Corley is concerned with the questionable intentions of his business partner, the sinister Adrian Ripburger, and good old Malcolm doesn't shy from being blatantly clear about his judgment.
Ripburger, you're dumber than dirt, Mr. Corley.
When the two representatives of Corley Motors run into the polecats on their way to the company's annual shareholders meeting, it doesn't take long for disaster to catch up with the group. The gang gets maneuvered by the sneaky Ripburger into providing the elderly CEO with a properly biker escort to the meeting, while Ben, being an obstacle on Ripburger's way, is knocked out cold by the goons of the insidious businessman. A gruesome murder happens shortly after, and Ben finds himself stranded alone, deep in bad country, with both the law and rival gangs on his tail and the mission of saving the legend of single-track vehicles of a faith worth in demise. Yeah, the overall tone of Full Throttle is significantly more serious and somber than the atmosphere usually associated with LucasArts titles. If the Monkey Island games were about the golden age of dauntless swashbucklery, then Full Throttle is somewhat of an aftermath of these times. The old glory is gone, and all the free spirits, all the pirates and mavericks on their glorious machines seem to be rather escaping from the inevitable future than being fully in control. In my eyes, the events and characters of Full Throttle are primarily a nostalgic tribute to the simpler times, times of courage and valor, where a man's word was worth more than a fat stack of cash money. Surely, this is only one possible interpretation, but it is worth noting that the time of the game's release was somewhat specific for LucasArts. Even though the company was still publishing quality games, and some of its greatest releases, like the timeless Curse of the Monkey Island, were still about to happen, something was already changing, and LucasArts' long and painful identity crisis was already slowly beginning. The two adventure games released by the company in 1995, namely Tim Schafer's Full Throttle and Steven Spielberg's The Dig, were already representing the new breed of LucasArts adventures, with faster, more streamlined gameplay mechanics and a greater focus on the flashy FMV segments. However, while The Dig has gracefully embraced the changes and went straight for the stars, becoming LucasArts' highest grossing narrative experience, Full Throttle stayed a bit behind, as if being a bit reluctant of taking the next exit leading towards the future. It is not to say that the game hasn't complied with the new policies of a no-nonsense, approachable challenge and enticing visuals. In fact, Full Throttle has done its part in that regard so well that it was initially criticized for its relatively low difficulty, leading to the somewhat short duration of the overall experience. But it also feels that the developers took their rebellious inspiration more to their hearts than it usually happens. With its rather intimate story that resonates more with emotions than reason, with its clear anti-corporate and anti-consumerism attitude, Full Throttle strikes me as an almost renegade operation held within the inner sanctum of LucasArts. Production values. A streamlined experience. It may be difficult to imagine from modern perspective, but this feature, so a thing that is almost universally expected from contemporary adventure games, was among the most criticized characteristics of Full Throttle. While the landscape of electronic entertainment was already starting to change in 1995, the majority of the audience of adventure games expected nothing less than mind-bending challenges from the games in the genre, and that's not exactly what's on offer here. In comparison to the complex absurdity of the classic Monkey Island or Zack McKracken games, Full Throttle is not particularly daunting. The classic SCUM user interface has been replaced with a simplified pie menu consisting of 4 interchangeable commands. Ben's inventory hardly ever consists of more than a handful of items, and the consecutive sections of the game itself are limited both in scope and in terms of tasks at hand, allowing even the less seasoned gamers to easily wrap their heads around the presented challenges. Personally, I never had any issue with the difficulty level of Full Throttle, as the available puzzles seem to rather aid and move the story forward instead of stopping it dead in its tracks. And what a story it is, man! The setting, the characters, the challenges, the tropes, everything feels just right, just like it should. Even though the presented part of the universe of Full Throttle isn't exactly vast and almost begs to be redone in an open world fashion, it is chock full of charm, charisma and a truly unique identity. It is actually impressive just how much lore and mythology has been squeezed into a game that can be completed in less than 3 hours, and it just shows the amazing virtuosity and mastery of Schafer and Grossman as writers. It is a damn solid setting that's depicted in a rock-steady fashion. One has to mention also the spectacular graphics and absolutely stellar art direction provided by none other than Peter Chan, the artist responsible for a lot of what's traditionally associated with the unmistakable, classic LucasArts feel. Supporting Chan was the talented Brian Ridge, whose work can be also seen in LucasArts' take on the tycoon genre, Afterlife, and the result of their cooperation is nothing short of mind-blowing. The backgrounds tell stories worth thousands of words, and the depicted universe features a lot of little nods to other LucasArts IPs. The Star Wars references are as plentiful as they are creative, however the keen eye of a nerdy viewer should also notice references to Maniac Mansion, Sam and Max, and even Coca-Cola portrayed in Full Throttle as Proto-Cola. Hell, legend says that even George Lucas himself makes an appearance. The character designs are as meaningful as they are unique, and the work performed by the animation team, supervised by Larry Ahern of the Day of the Tentacle fame, can be only described as amazingly phenomenal. It all just works, like a finely tuned engine. And such a visual masterpiece demands an appropriate sound score. Let's just say that the lead sound designer on the project was none other than Clint Bajakian. I'm mad sorry, I have no idea how to pronounce this name and I don't mean any disrespect. In fact, if this name doesn't get you hyped even a little, then I'm highly suspicious of your knowledge of classic LucasArts games. This guy is a true prodigy among magicians, and I think that Full Throttle was the first game where I have actually noticed the importance of background sound effects. This, in turn, has led me to thinking of making my own adventure games, but that led only to trouble, and that's a topic for a whole different story. The name train doesn't stop here though. The story goes that Schafer originally wanted the grunge legend Soundgarden to perform the music for the game, but since they weren't available or willing, the developers have decided for the next best thing: the Gone Jackals. Guess what? Hard rock music fits a story about bikers just like a glove. A fingerless, studded glove. Also, it is worth noting that Full Throttle is one of the very few, if not the only, LucasArts games to feature music that was recorded externally. Speaking of recordings, we still haven't mentioned the voice talents featured in the game, and that's actually somewhat of a crime. Adding yet another unique feature to the already impressive list of Full Throttle's intriguing characteristics, LucasArts has employed for the project a number of accomplished voice acting professionals registered at the Screen Actors Guild, and the results are ridiculously impressive. I could praise the talent of veterans like Kev Saucy, Susie McNeil, Jack Angel, Maurice LaMarche or Hamilton Camp, who portrayed some of the most important characters of the game, but just have a look at some of their work. No, seriously, look at it. I hope you're really looking, because this is just one person. Impressive, no? I know, I'm impressed. And that's not all. Full Throttle features Mark Hamill as the villainous Ripburger, and this simply has to be one of the best performances in his voice acting career. Roy Conrad, who sadly passed away in 2002, does a fantastic job at delivering Ben's gravelly, direct voice that's basically a study, whiskey shots and cigarette smoke. What's interesting, Roy Conrad wasn't a smoker himself. But wait, if Conrad wasn't a smoker and he still died in his early 60s then... fuck. But hey, Full Throttle even features Steve Bloom in the role of Sid, who has like one line in the whole game. Oh, no, actually, not even that. The Legacy. Even though LucasArts made 2 attempts of returning to the world of Full Throttle, first time in 2000 with Full Throttle Payback, and second time in 2002 with Full Throttle Hell on Wheels developed for the PlayStation 2 and the OG Xbox, these plans never came to fruition. Besides, by 2001 the majority of the creative team responsible for Ben's road trip adventure, namely people like Grossman, Schafer or Ahern, have already left LucasArts to pursue their own goals, so one can only speculate just how faithful the potential sequels would feel to the roots of the IP. However, in late 2015, Tim Schafer's independent game development studio, Double Fine, has announced works on a remastered version of Full Throttle, aptly titled Full Throttle Remastered and scheduled for publishing sometime in 2017. While the perspective of Full Throttle being available for a whole new generation of gamers is very exciting, and I cannot wait to see the game's remarkable visuals in an updated form, I deeply believe that Tim Schafer's first big own game requires more than a remaster. It needs a remake, especially when one considers all the stuff that had been seemingly cut from the original script. Like, this is Maureen, Mo. She lives in a settlement called Melonweed and she's super cool. Initially, Mo was supposed to have a rich twin sister named Tina, and the siblings were supposed to have this Prince and Pauper subplot going on. They were, but that didn't happen. Mo... Shouldn't there also be more of Steve Bloom? Just wondering. Or Susie here. She's a much needed motherly character, but she appears in the story so out of nowhere that even Fate No More is like, what? Yeah. The game was also going to feature an interactive sequence of Ben tripping on Piotli, and while this idea has in the end served as an inspiration for Psychonauts, it would just rather be lovely to see all that originally planned stuff actually included in the Full Throttle experience. Obviously it's silly to expect that stuff from the remastered version, but now that the copyrights for Full Throttle are back at Schafer, maybe it's worth considering making a sequel. An open world sequel that would feature RPG elements perhaps. Are you listening, Double Fine? I hope you are. I'm also wondering what will happen to all the Star Wars references from the original game, now that the owners of the respective copyrights have gone their separate ways. One way or another, Full Throttle is an amazing experience wrapped in one of the most memorable stories. It may be not the most challenging adventure game in LucasArts' portfolio, but in terms of storytelling that resonates with the very marrow of one's bones, it is way up there, among the very best. For that reason alone, it seems that modern days, where the expected standard of adventure games is much closer to the releases of Telltale games than, let's say, the original Secret of the Monkey Island, are more than suitable to jump on a Corley motorcycle. After all, you just can't beat a Corley.
The population is greatly decreased, and now the odds are greatly increased that I may someday get a chance to kiss your lips. I thank the Lord each day for the apocalypse.